I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. Continuing in the Doctrine and Covenants again. We have just read section 84, very long section all about the priesthood, the duties of the priesthood, delineating between the Melchizedek and Aaronic priesthood, all that good stuff. This was given in September of 1832, September 22nd and 23rd. As part of that revelation, Newell K. Whitney, who was bishop in Kirtland, is called to go on a mission to Albany, New York, and Boston. Shortly after this is given the end of September, sometime in October, Bishop Whitney and Joseph Smith go to preach to these three cities. However, Joseph Smith returns fairly early on November 6th because his son is born. This is Joseph Smith III. He is the fourth child born to Joseph and Emma, but he is the first one to live into adulthood. He's really the first one to live beyond a single day. Now, they do have their adopted daughter, Julia, who was born to John Murdoch. Her twin brother died just before the age of 1 year. But she also lives into adulthood. But Joseph Smith III, he is the first of their natural-born children to live into adulthood. Shortly after he is born, so he's born on the 6th, on the 8th, Joseph Young, Brigham Young, and Heber C. Kimball come out from New York to visit with Joseph Smith. I believe this is the first time that they are meeting Joseph Smith. All of them great men. And I don't know when exactly they were baptized, but they were baptized sometime previous to this meeting, and they are coming to see the prophet. At this meeting with the prophet, the gift of tongues is manifest for the first time in this dispensation, with Brigham Young and Joseph Smith both speaking in tongues. I believe Joseph Young also speaks in tongues on this occasion, but I'm not positive. If my memory serves me correctly, the tongues that they speak in the Adamic language, and afterwards Joseph Smith interprets what they said, or at least declares that it was the Adamic tongue. I think he actually says that he is not permitted to interpret it, but it was the Adamic tongue. And that will bring us up to section 85. Now, the heading to section 85 states, Revelation given through Joseph Smith the prophet at Kirtland, Ohio, November 27, 1832. Recorded in History of the Church, Volume 1, pages 298 to 299. This section is an extract from a letter of the prophet to W. Phelps, who was living in Independence, Missouri. It was given to answer questions about those saints who had moved to Zion, but who had not received their inheritances according to the established order in the church. Now, in the history of the church that Joseph Smith wrote, he provides the entirety of this letter. This is just an extract from it. It is not the entire letter. It was written on November 27th. Now, this says it's a revelation given through Joseph Smith. I'm not sure if that is exactly accurate, because it is a letter. I think it would be more appropriately referred to as an epistle of Joseph Smith, just like the epistles of Paul. But that doesn't mean that there's not truth here, that it is not inspired of God. But it's not in the same thing. It's not quite the same as the other revelations that are given to Joseph Smith directly by God. This seems to be more Joseph Smith writing a letter that is given through inspiration of God, but not as a direct revelation. So the revelations are God speaking to Joseph Smith, and Joseph Smith just telling the scribes what to write down. This is Joseph Smith speaking, but as he is inspired, if you understand the difference. But let us read this, section 85. It is the duty of the Lord's clerk, whom he has appointed, to keep a history and a general church record of all things that transpire in Zion, and of all those who consecrate properties and receive inheritances legally from the bishop, and also their manner of life, their faith and works, and also of the apostates who apostatize after receiving their inheritances. It is contrary to the will and commandment of God that those who receive not their inheritance by consecration, agreeable to his law which he has given, that he may tithe his people, to prepare them against the day of vengeance and burning, should have their names enrolled with the people of God. Neither is their genealogy to be kept, or to be had, where it may be found on any of the records or history of the church. Their name shall not be found, neither the names of their fathers, nor the names of the children written in the book of the law of God, saith the Lord of hosts. Yea, thus saith the still small voice, which whispereth through and pierceth all things, and oftentimes it maketh my bones to quake while it maketh manifest, saying, And it shall come to pass that I, the Lord God, will send one mighty and strong, holding the scepter of power in his hand, clothed with light for a covering, whose mouth shall utter words, eternal words, while his bowels shall be a fountain of truth, to set in order the house of God, and to arrange by lot the inheritances of the saints whose names are found, and the names of their fathers and of their children, enrolled in the book of the law of God. While that man who was called of God and appointed, that putteth forth his hand to steady the ark of God, shall fall by the shaft of death, like a tree that is smitten by the vivid shaft of lightning. And all they who are not found written in the book of remembrance shall find none inheritance in that day, but they shall be cut asunder, and their portion shall be appointed them among unbelievers, where are wailing and gnashing of teeth. These things I say not of myself. Therefore, as the Lord speaketh, he will also fulfill. And they who are of the high priesthood, whose names are not found written in the book of the law, or that are found to have apostatized, or to have been cut off from the church, as well as the lesser priesthood, or the members in that day, shall not find an inheritance among the saints of the Most High. Therefore it shall be done unto them as unto the children of the priest, as will be found recorded in the 2nd chapter and 61st and 2nd verses of Ezra. So, the question arises, what do we do with all these saints coming to Zion who have not received an inheritance? Joseph Smith's answer, summed up simply, is, did they enter into the covenant of consecration? Did they consecrate their property to the building up of Zion? If they did, give them an inheritance. If they didn't, if they're just going out there and they are not living the law of consecration, they have no claim on the properties that have been consecrated by others. If you want to lay claim to an inheritance through the church, you must consecrate everything to the church. If you want the bishop to give you land that was purchased with the storehouse money, then you must consecrate everything you have to the storehouse. If you don't, you are not recorded in the church. Now, I don't think this means that they don't have the priesthood. It means that they are not recorded as being members of the United Order, and therefore they cannot have claim to anything regarding the United Order. Now, the reference to Ezra, this is in the book of Ezra when the priests were coming back out to Jerusalem and reestablishing the temple. Many priests came and said, oh, look, we're priests too. But they couldn't find their names in the records. So remember, at the time, priests were all priests by lineage. You had to prove that you were a descendant of Aaron in order to be considered a priest. These men couldn't do that. They did not have the genealogy to prove their lineage of priesthood. Therefore, they were not allowed to practice the ordinances of the priesthood. They were not allowed to perform priesthood functions. And in the same way, those who do not have their names written in the record of the United Order will not have part in the United Order. And when there are two different records, there are those who are members of the order, and there are the former members who have apostatized and are therefore removed from the order. Unless your name is an active member in good standing of the United Order, you have no claim on the properties that were consecrated by others. So you want to move to Zion, you move to Zion, but unless you are willing to consecrate everything to God and the church, you have no claim. You have to buy your own land. You have to establish your own inheritance. You cannot gain an inheritance through the church. In other words, simply put, unless you are part of the order, you cannot lay claim to anything in the order. But I'm going to leave that here. Our next video, I believe, will be 2 sections, section 86 and 87. So I will see you there.